There is a man who spent his career telling people how much they could safely spend in retirement. He is the one who came up with the 4% rule, the number that has been quoted at every kitchen table in this country for 30 years. This month, he said something that should stop you. He thinks his own number was too cautious. He has moved it up, and he says most people could go higher still. Now here's the part I actually want to talk about. It will not change a thing for most of you. Because the people who follow that rule most carefully are not the ones asking whether they can spend more. They are the ones who cannot bring themselves to spend what they already have permission to spend. There is a study out of a benefits research institute that found about a third of retirees in their mid-80s still have as much money as they did the day they retired, or more. Read that again. Not a third who ran out, a third who never touched it. Let me say the obvious thing first, so we can move past it. I am not going to tell you what percentage to withdraw. That is not what this channel does, and it is not what you need. The man who invented the rule moved his own number from 4 to 4.7, and he has said in interviews that 5.5 is workable for a lot of people. Those are his numbers, not mine, and the right number for you depends on things I cannot see from here. What I want to look at is the gap. The gap between what you are allowed to spend and what you actually spend. Because for a certain kind of person, and I suspect you are that kind of person, or you would not be watching a channel like this one, that gap does not close when somebody gives you a bigger number. It just moves. And before anybody writes to tell me that a third of retirees keeping their money is a good news story, let me deal with that, because sometimes it is. Some of those people are doing it on purpose. They want to leave something to their children, or to a church, or to a cause, and they have decided that on purpose, and they are happy. If that is you, this episode is not about you, and you can go do something better with the next 10 minutes. But that is not most of the people in that number, and here's how you tell the difference. A person who is leaving money on purpose can tell you who it is for and roughly how much. It is a plan with a name attached to it. A person who is not spending out of fear cannot answer that question at all. They just know the balance should not go down. If you have never been able to say out loud who your money is being saved for, then it is not a legacy. It is a held breath. So why is that? I want to give you 3 reasons, and I want you to notice which one makes your stomach tighten, because that is the one that is actually yours. The first one is the obvious one. You are afraid of running out. This is the fear everybody names, and it is the least interesting of the 3, because it is the one you can partly answer with arithmetic. You can run the numbers, look at your income sources, and get a reasonably honest picture of whether you are in danger. Most people who are this careful are not in danger, and a good advisor can show them that in an afternoon. Here's the thing though. I have watched people get that answer, the real answer, from someone qualified with the spreadsheet on the table and go home and still not spend the money, so if arithmetic were the problem, arithmetic would fix it. It does not. Which means for most careful savers, running out is not the real fear. It is the acceptable fear. It is the one that sounds responsible when you say it out loud. The second one is harder to say. You are afraid of being a burden. This is the one nobody wants to name at a dinner table. What if I need care? What if I live to 94 and something goes wrong at 88? What if my children have to take care of me and I have nothing left and they have to choose between their own retirement and mine? I want to be careful here because unlike the first one, this fear is pointing at something real. Long-term care is expensive. It is not fully covered by the programs people assume cover it, and families do get wrecked by it. That is true. But notice what the fear does with that truth. It does not turn it into a plan. It turns it into a rule. And the rule is always the same. Spend nothing extra, ever, just in case. A real plan would look completely different. A real plan would say, here is the specific amount set aside for that scenario. Here is what it covers. Here is when we would use it. And everything outside that is money we are allowed to enjoy. That is a fence. Fear does not build fences. Fear puts a lock on the whole house. So if this is the one that tightened your stomach, the useful move is not to spend more today. It is to draw the fence. Sit down with somebody who does this professionally and put an actual number on the care scenario, and then let yourself know that everything on the other side of that fence is yours. The third one is the quiet one. And in my experience, it is the real one more often than either of the other 2. You do not know who you are if you are not saving. For 40 years, being a saver was not just something you did, it was a thing you were. It was the discipline that got you through the year your hours were cut. It was the reason you did not buy the boat when everyone else did. It was the source of a very particular kind of pride, the kind you never had to say out loud because the balance said it for you. And now somebody tells you the job is done and you can start spending it down. What they are really saying, and I do not think most advisors hear themselves say it, is that the identity is over, that the thing you were good at is no longer needed, so of course you resist. Not because you are irrational, because you are being asked to retire the part of yourself that you like best. That is why a bigger withdrawal number does not move anybody. It is not a math problem in a math costume. It is a grief problem in a math costume. There is a fourth thing worth naming, and it is not a fear at all. It is a habit that outlived its usefulness. For most of your working life, the correct answer to almost every money question was no, not yet, later. That answer was right so many times that it stopped being a decision and became a reflex. Somebody asks whether you want to do the expensive version of something, and the word no is out of your mouth before you have priced it. A reflex is not a belief. You cannot argue with it, which is why the spreadsheet never works. You can only notice it. And the noticing is oddly simple. The next time you say no to something that costs money, wait a beat and ask yourself whether you decided that, or whether it just came out. Most people, the first few times they try this, are startled by how often it just came out. I would also say something about couples, because this rarely lands on two people the same way. In most households I have watched, one person is holding the brake and the other is quietly waiting. The one holding the brake usually thinks they are being the responsible one, and the one waiting usually stops asking, because asking twice feels like nagging, and asking 3 times feels like a fight. What happens next is that the subject goes underground. Nobody is arguing about money, and nobody is deciding anything either. 10 years pass in that silence. If that sounds like your house, the useful move is not to win the argument. It is to put the question on the table as a shared one, rather than as a request from one person to another. Not, can we afford this? What are we saving it for? And when does that start? Now let me tell you the 2 things I have seen actually help, and neither of them is a spreadsheet. The first is to give the money a job instead of a number. Nobody in this position can spend money on nothing. Spending on nothing feels like leaking. But almost everybody in this position can spend money on a purpose. There is a difference between deciding to spend $9,000 this year and deciding to fly your daughter and the grandchildren out twice a year while the grandchildren are still young enough to want to come. Same money. Completely different feeling. One is a hole in the wall of a dam. The other is a decision you made on purpose, which is exactly the thing you have been good at your whole life. You are not stopping being a careful person. You are aiming it at something. One more thing about giving money a job. Make it recurring if you can. A one-time splurge gets second-guessed for a month afterward because it sits there in the statement looking like an exception. A standing commitment stops being a decision after the 2nd or 3rd time. The tickets in March. The dinner every second Sunday. It becomes part of how the year is shaped, and nobody re-examines the shape of their year every 30 days. The second thing is to name the deadline nobody writes down. The money has a longer life expectancy than your knees do. There is a window, and it is usually somewhere in the 70s for most people when you have both the money and the health to use it. After that, the money still works fine, but the trips are shorter, the stairs matter, and the list of things you can enjoy starts to quietly get smaller. Nobody sends you a letter about that window closing, it just closes. So the question I would leave you with, and this is the one I actually want you to sit with tonight, is not how much can I safely withdraw? It is this. What is the thing I keep deciding I will do later, and what exactly am I waiting for? If the honest answer is that you are waiting until you feel financially safe enough, then you already have your answer, because you have been waiting for that feeling for a long time, and it has not arrived. It is not going to arrive because of a number. People who feel financially safe usually feel that way because they decided to, not because a threshold was crossed. Let me put the whole thing back in proportion before I let you go, because I do not want anybody hearing this as permission to be reckless. Nothing I said tonight means empty the account. Careful people are careful for good reasons, and the world is genuinely uncertain. Somebody who spends down too fast at 68 has a much worse problem than somebody who dies with more than they meant to. But there is a cost on the other side too, and almost nobody counts it, because it does not show up on any statement. It is the trip that did not happen. It is the year the house needed a stair lift, and it got argued about for 8 months. It is the grandchildren who remember a grandparent who was always worried about money, and who never once understood that the worry was for them. That cost is real. It just never gets written down anywhere. The usual note. I am not a financial advisor, an accountant, or an attorney, and nothing here is advice about your own money. The withdrawal figures mentioned belong to the person who published them, not to me, and the research described is a study of a population, not a prediction about you. Talk to somebody qualified who can see your whole picture before you change anything. Now I want to hear from you, and I read these. What is the thing you keep deciding to do later? Not the big fantasy one, the ordinary one. The visit, the repair, the class, the trip you have moved twice. Tell me what it is and how long it has been on the list, because I think a lot of people are about to recognize themselves in your comment. If this was useful, subscribe. The one I would send you to next is the episode on why so many people who have enough still feel behind, because that is the same machinery running in a different room. I am Sam. Write it down, then go cut the grass.